if you're in a union and if you know somebody that has a disability, it is imperative to have solidarity and support for your disabled fellow coworkers. And even if you're not in a union, I think it is very imperative to also express solidarity and support your disabled coworkers. Because the thing is that it's already tough enough for us to advocate for ourselves. But then on top of it, you also have corporations, and particularly, and remember this, if you guys have not heard anything from me at all today, remember this. Human resources are for the benefit of the corporation, not for you. So you'll have human resources against you, as well as the corporation managers, upper management, executives, owners, whoever. So this is why it is important for you as a worker to also be in solidarity with those of us. If you want to speak to that as well, Michelle.
There's a lot I could say. I'll try to be kind of more succinct.
I want you to go crazy, actually.
Okay, you want me to go crazy on this one? So I was in a union.
So to the point where it doesn't harm you in future prospects. That just put that way.
So one point I'll push back a little bit more. It's not just about solidarity with the workers. It's the intention to include workers.
Okay, I concede that.
Many unions by default are based in the capitalism valuation of the individual as based on their means of production. How much can you produce?
Okay.
Therefore, it's kind of scripted into unions that if you're not a worker, you're not a part of a union. If you're not contributing in the way that a union, the union roles are contributing, you're whatever. So there's an attitudinal barrier to unions that most disabled people encounter. And it actually, for me, was a huge turnoff until I moved to California and I became more aware of the power of the unions here. Unions fight for the benefits of their workers. They don't always fight for the benefits of society. So there's these kind of issues and struggles within the union structure. And this goes back to the intention part. We need unions to literally deconstruct their ableism and get rid of it, much like they have done with racism before, much like they have done with all of these issues. So up until the point that unions do that, it's going to be an upward struggle for disabled workers to find equity with them, because you also get created as a weak point. You are the weak person. You have more needs than anybody else. You have these weird things called accommodations that are not really destigmatized. When I was in the position I was in most recently, it was a union position. However, I couldn't join the union because their process wasn't accessible to me.
What?
I was told I had to go attend the meeting, and I couldn't get to the meeting and work a 40-hour job and be doing everything else. And I'm sure there was a gap in my work description where I could have done that as a part of my job, but I was still doing impression management. I couldn't take time off to go to this meeting when they were literally complaining about any meeting I attended anyways, and they weren't willing to do a remote meeting with me. They were mandating it be face-to-face. They were mandating all of these different things. There's a group that can be created within unions that is very, very powerful, and it's a disability resource group that gets created. And then those with disabilities have a resource of people when they get hurt on the job, they can go to these co-union members and create community and learn from them in ways that they're really going to struggle to learn anywhere else. So there's a lot of power and beauty in unions, and unions need to go in and start to do the work to get rid of the ableism, check your privilege, check your bias, check your, look at your documents. Are they accessible to a blind person? Are they accessible to somebody that is deaf or hard of hearing? Are they accessible to somebody who's in a wheelchair? A lot of union halls around me aren't even wheelchair accessible. And this is California. Some have done work to become better, but when you're, they're, it's the system is toxic. So we have to put the work in to start to unlearn the bias. It's just a really, really hard situation. That's my spiel on union. I have a sub spiel that I can go into with the pay and compensation if you want me to do that with the healthcare stuff.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So in this job, I also opted to accept the benefits from the job, which put me in a very, very new place that I didn't have the skill set to navigate yet. I didn't have the knowledge base to navigate. When you get a primary insurance through your employer, a work-based insurance policy, your Medicare becomes a secondary insurance and not a primary insurance. So the Medicare that I have gotten used to and rely on and use regularly suddenly became my secondary insurance. And my health plan through my workplace kicked in, and it was like, oh my God, I can't do all of this and work a full-time job. I was in like this, what's called a work hardening period, when you haven't worked a full-time job and you start doing it, or if you've had an injury on the job and you go back to work, there's a period of time where you're kind of phasing in and your body's getting used to it. So my health suffered. I couldn't get a wheelchair. I had to pay $5,000 out of pocket to buy a wheelchair because my wheelchair died on me. And the scooter that I had as a backup device wasn't going to help. It wasn't helping me much, and in fact, it was harming me. So by shifting, this is where single payer is essential, by shifting from this workplace entitlement program of health benefits to the other thing was, sorry, I blipped to a different topic, but I'll finish where I'm at. So I had to learn a new system. And that new system meant hoops and loops and getting established with a new provider and getting all these other things kind of put into play. I probably didn't make the best decision. However, and this is where I'll segue into the other piece, the treatment I've received under a workplace health insurance program is heads and tails above what I receive on Medicare.
Wow.
They were calling me and explaining the benefits. They were giving me the resource packets. They were doing all this other stuff. It was like, oh yeah, just come to us if there's any problem. Because suddenly, as a human being, I had value because I was producing in the world, and the doctors were cognizant of that, and they were respectful of that. And the bureaucratic process was one of entitlement and not one of human rights.
Wow.
It's our systems are so convoluted, and these barriers are great and many, and the answers are systemic solutions and not band-aids that get applied in all of these situations. Why is it that this corporation insurance policy has fewer copays than Medicare does on its own? Because 20% copay with Medicare is 20%. There's no wiggle room. But the benefit I got was almost full coverage, almost on everything. Wow. And I didn't have to juggle that. And this is because the unions have fought for that health program. But why don't we fight for that health quality for everybody in our society, and not just for our coworkers that pay the dues to belong to this union or that union?